This is Ringler Radio, where you get all the latest news and information about structured settlements from Ringler Associates, the first name in structured settlements, helping injured people and their families since 1975. Ringler Radio is made possible in part by Allstate, American General, John Hancock, Liberty Mutual, MetLife, Mutual of Omaha, New York Life, Pacific Life, and Prudential. Now join Ringler Radio host Larry Cohen.
Well, hello and welcome to Ringler Radio, everyone. I'm Larry Cohen, the head of Ringler Associates Northeast Operations, and we're glad you could join us again today. Well, a jury in St. Louis found Johnson & Johnson liable for injuries resulting from the use of its talc-containing products, such as Johnson's baby powder and shower-to-shower body powder for feminine hygiene. The jury awarded the family of Jacqueline Fox $72 million after agreeing that the products contributed to the development of her ovarian cancer. In a statement, Carol Goodrich, a Johnson & Johnson spokeswoman, said, "We have no higher responsibility than the health and safety of consumers, and we are disappointed with the outcome of the trial. We sympathize with the plaintiff's family, but firmly believe the safety of cosmetic talc is supported by decades of scientific evidence. It goes against decades of sound science proving the safety of talc as a cosmetic ingredient in multiple products." And Johnson & Johnson, of course, is expected to appeal. But today on Ringler Radio, we'll take a look at this important case, Johnson & Johnson's liability, the $72 million verdict, and its ramifications, and of course, look forward to future litigation that may possibly arise. And joining us today for that discussion is a friend and special guest, Jere Beasley, founder of the Beasley Allen Law Firm in Montgomery, Alabama. Jere has been an advocate for victims of wrongdoing since 1962, and during his career, he's tried hundreds of cases and helped so many individuals that needed their help. And his distinguished career has resulted in numerous courtroom victories, including many landmark cases that have had a positive impact on society. So with that, welcome to the show, Jere. Happy to have you back, and good to have you again.
Thank you, Larry. It's really good to be back, and I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity.
Terrific, terrific. Well, Jere, Ms. Fox, in this particular case in St. Louis, was diagnosed with ovarian cancer 2 years ago after using Johnson's baby powder and shower-to-shower body powder for feminine hygiene. She used it for more than 35 years. Tell us a little bit about Jacqueline and the case itself.
Well, let's go back to Johnson & Johnson, and then we'll bring it up to date.
Sure.
First, Ms. Fox was a lifetime user. She started using the baby powder as an infant, and her mother insisted on it, and she continued that throughout her lifetime. Johnson & Johnson had noticed as far back as 1979 that there was a risk of ovarian cancer connected to the use of their product, talc. And the internal documents, I would like for anybody who doubts that Johnson & Johnson knew about the risk, hid the risk, and actually ran the risk of people dying and eventually somebody catching them. And a jury did catch them in this case. But let's just go back and kind of look at the internal documents.
Sure.
They starting in 1979, then 1982 when the Kramer study came out, and this was the first significant study, and it showed a 30% increase, relative increase in getting ovarian cancer from the use of the talc products. And then let's go to one particular document, and I'd like for Johnson & Johnson to explain this one to the public. They had a paid consultant, a toxicologist, Dr. Alfred P. Weiner, who wrote them a letter in 1997, and he starts off by saying, "You're not going to like what you're going to hear, but here it is from your consultant." And he points out that they had been lying to the public over a period of time, and he specifically mentioned 3 specific areas where they were lying about the safety of the product. Then he goes on to tell them this, and this absolutely is just unbelievable that they could have this in their file. And then a spokesperson issue a statement like this post-verdict statement from Johnson & Johnson. Starts off by saying this, and I'm going to quote it. "Anybody who denies this risk that the talc industry will be perceived by the public like it perceives the cigarette industry, denying the obvious in the face of all evidence to the contrary, This absolutely, if that's not an indictment of their conduct, and
sure.
This is their document from their consultant,
right?
And they never thought that a jury in the United States of America would ever see this and a number of other documents. For example, the Cancer Prevention Institute went directly to the CEO at Johnson & Johnson, laid out all the evidence, put it on the table, and made this statement. You need to either pull this product from the market, or you need to at least warn people of the risk. And it was aimed directly at women. This is a tragic reality.
Well, Jerry, the question I have for you is, given those consultants who came up with those pretty startling findings, was there any sort of warning by Johnson & Johnson after that to the consumers about the potential dangers?
No, they have never warned to this day. In fact, at trial, they didn't call any corporate officer. Not one single corporate officer testified. We didn't have access to anybody except one particular guy who came in from England, who used to work for him and now is a consultant and is an expert witness for him. But let's kind of go back to this particular time frame.
Sure.
I believe I'm correct in saying in 2002, I know we have the document, in 2002, their sales were declining. Johnson & Johnson's sales were declining. So they do a demographic marketing survey, find out that African American women and Hispanic women are their targets, that they're the greatest users. So what do? In an internal memo, here's what they say. No health benefit. There's a safe alternative in cornstarch. Cancer link. Let's go after these two groups. And that's exactly what they did. That is callous to the extreme. For example, an African-American woman is below the baseline without talc involved at all. Insofar as the risk of ovarian cancer, an African-American woman is below the baseline. With talc involvement, the studies show that woman has a 400% relative risk of getting ovarian cancer. And Jacqueline Fox lived to the age of 62, and she had been a lifetime user. She was never warned, never had any idea. And here's the kicker. In 2006, the company that mines the talc in China sells it to Johnson & Johnson, and all they do is grind it down to powder form. Johnson & Johnson adds a little perfume, and then they sell it to women all over the world. So the mining company, a company called Lucinac at that time, now called Emrys, in 2006, they start putting a warning on the containers that go to Johnson & Johnson saying that this product is carcinogenic and specifically aims it at women. And Johnson & Johnson had this, and all they did was never pass this on to the public.
Interesting.
And let's go back to the FDA real quickly. Dena Cosmetic, talcum, the baby powder, and shower to shower are considered cosmetics. They're not controlled like drugs are controlled, and the drug control by the FDA is as weak as leftover coffee. But, well, that's not even a good analogy, just weak as it can be. Let's think a little bit about how the FDA works. A citizen's petition was filed back in 1994 by the Cancer Prevention Institute again. The response from a gentleman by the name of John Bailey, and that name ought to be etched down in stones. John Bailey, working for the FDA, is the person with the government who had the responsibility of handling that petition. He responds to, and I'm going to paraphrase what he said, but this is basically it. We're understaffed, underfunded, don't have the resources to deal with this. 1994. Where do you think John Bailey is working today?
Probably Johnson & Johnson.
Well, he actually, the trade association that Johnson & Johnson actually finances and supports.
Well, that doesn't surprise me.
Not only John's working for him, so is his wife.
Interesting.
We're talking about big bucks.
Interesting.
He's not a cheap guy. So now he becomes an expert witness for Johnson & Johnson. They said they were going to call him in this trial, but they didn't because they knew that we would literally blow him out of the water with these documents.
Well, Jerry, in past shows where we've discussed different cases about different issues, and companies have covered up vital information about their products, it seems to be an epidemic in corporate America. What could Johnson & Johnson have done differently here? And obviously they needed to do some warning. What was it, in your view? I mean, they have a cornstarch product that seems to have a different relationship with the way it affects the human body. Why would they not, move to that product or warn about the talc product? What is your opinion about that? What happened?
Well, they were making so much money selling the other products that were actually so widely and effectively marketed. All the commercials. Any young girl would be singing that commercial. A sprinkle a day keeps the odor away, and you see this girl in the shower and coming out. And anyway, that's the reason they were making big bucks. And they have not advertised. They sell cornstarch. In fact, you can go to a drugstore or any store, and you'll see on the shelf those products in the same area. And in the memo I mentioned a few minutes ago, they admitted that cornstarch, while it had no health benefit, had no toxic effect.
Right.
And so they knew exactly what they were doing, but all they had to do was warn. In fact, if they would simply warn, I think they ought to pull the product from the market. But they certainly need to warn the people who are using it, because let's compare some of the experts for the defendant, Johnson & Johnson, who testified at trial, also have testified in the Prempro litigation, which causes breast cancer, in the Actos litigation, which causes bladder cancer. And let's compare Prempro and talc. Prempro has a 1.27, significantly a relative risk of 127. It has a black box warning on the product. When the person gets that drug, it has the black box warning, which is the strongest warning that the FDA can issue, and that is called a black box warning. This drug, talc, not drug, but this cosmetic product, talc, has a 1.33 significant relative risk of ovarian cancer. So you have one drug, a drug that is less risky, with a black box warning, and everybody knows that those cases were settled for a huge amount of money for the victims all over the country. Same way with Actos. But after I saw the news release that Johnson & Johnson put out, which is the typical say nothing news release after a verdict, I issued a news release which really was not picked up very effectively. It was probably our fault for the timing. I said to the CEO of Johnson & Johnson, I said, if there's any doubt in the public's mind as to who's right and who's wrong, or who's telling the truth and who's lying, put all these documents on your website and let the public access those documents and read for themselves.
Yeah, and they could draw their own conclusions.
And then make a decision. I'm not a betting man, but I bet a huge amount that they would never do that.
Well, I hear you on that.
Never.
I understand an expert at the trial testified that 45,000 women have died as a result of ovarian cancer that may be attributed to talcum powder. And there's a lot more that are going to die within the next year as a result of talc, upwards of 1,500, yeah. I've heard. Those are pretty overwhelming statistics. Why doesn't the public hear about that?
I've been relatively shocked. For example, during the trial, not one single news media outlet covered that trial with the exception of Bloomberg. And Bloomberg had a person there at the beginning and then at the very end. Even the local media didn't cover it. Now, I don't know exactly why, but this is a monumental lawsuit. This jury, by the way, was made up. It was a fairly conservative. If you put on a scale of 1 to 10, they would be more toward 10 than 1 insofar as being conservative. And the foreperson was the medical person from the medical community. You had an accountant on the jury. You had a gentleman who was working on his PhD in genetics. And it was a very sophisticated, very smart jury that understood the issues. And let me just back up and say this. On the punitive damage award, compensatory first, we gave the jury a range of 5 to 7 million. They returned a verdict of 10 million compensatory. We gave the jury a range of 10 to 15 million for each of the two Johnson & Johnson defendants. They returned a verdict of 62 million. I couldn't figure exactly how they gave more than we asked for, is what I'm saying, wow. Because they were shocked I don't say they were angry. I think they were outraged at the conduct of Johnson & Johnson. But I still couldn't figure the $62 million. So the foreperson of the jury issued a statement, or maybe it was interviewed by the St. Louis papers, and she told them that they had given $1 million per year for every year she lived to punish Johnson & Johnson.
Well, there's a rationale there for sure. And, your firm, Jerry, has been up against big, giant corporations like this from time to time. This is what's really your life's work. What's your strategy in cases like these when you're confronting a company like Johnson & Johnson, which most people would perceive in the public as huge and doing what the public might think is for the public benefit, and then you're facing something like this. So what's your strategy when you approach a case like this?
Well, we know, first of all, that they're going to have tremendous lawyers and access to experts all over the country. And we know that oftentimes the truth doesn't really matter to them at all. In fact, in this case, the truth was not even on their radar screen. And so we go in realizing we've got to be well prepared. We've got to have good experts, and we've got to do diligent, hard-working type discovery. For example, we got these documents, and Johnson & Johnson never believed it. Let me back up on that. Johnson & Johnson never even gave these documents to the FDA. Did not give it to their own experts. In fact, their own experts had never seen these internal documents when they testified at trial. So to answer your question, we just realized that we're going to be in for a fight when we take on the giants of the industry. And we know also that the public believes we over-regulate in America. Truth of the matter, the federal government does generally a lousy job of regulation. And the reason is that Congress won't fund them because the people that control Congress don't want them funded, don't want them adequately staffed. And if they get a good person, we found this out in the Toyota case, NHTSA. They hired away the gentleman who was investigating the sudden acceleration. He all of a sudden becomes the wonder for Toyota. And we've run into this in almost every case. If they've got a good person working for, say, NHTSA, the regulatory agency, or the FDA, the industry will hire them away. Yeah, and they want them weak.
They want to pay them big and silence them. Well, let me ask you this: on those incriminating documents that you talked about before that Johnson & Johnson had, did you get these through discovery, or was there a whistleblower?
Yeah.
How did that work?
No, discovery.
Discovery. Okay.
I'm going to make a prediction that you're going to see more whistleblowing from the industry because you're going to have somebody in that industry who has a conscience and wants to do the right thing and knows what they're doing. And eventually you're going to have some whistleblowing. I think you've already seen it. I believe maybe Pfizer, but I know there's some whistleblowing activity. And we've been involved in the whistleblower litigation extensively. In fact, we had the Snowden case,
yes,
which it was really just shocking that they didn't do background checks on the people that they should have been doing background checks on. They're getting paid to do it.
Well, one thing, Jerry, we know for sure that you're going to be kept busy for quite a while with a lot of these cases. So let's take a quick break right now and be right back in a minute, right here on Ringler Radio, with more with Jere Beasley on this very important and troubling case about Johnson & Johnson and talc in their powder. We'll be right back.
This is Ringler Radio from Ringler Associates, the leader in the structured settlements profession nationwide. Did you know that Ringler is involved in a third of all structured settlement cases in the country? Ringler Associates works with all the parties in a lawsuit settlement to find the best possible financial solution for the people involved. There's a Ringler Associate in all the major cities of the U.S. No one has more experience than a Ringler Associate. Check out our new website at www.ringlerassociates.com for the best information for claimants, legal professionals, and claims personnel, and to find the Ringler Associate nearest you. When it's your interest at stake in a lawsuit settlement, you want only the best financial plan. You can count on Ringler Associates to structure a customized plan that meets the needs of you and your family for the future. Visit ringlerassociates.com to learn more.
Well, welcome back to Ringler Radio. Glad you could join us. I'm joined by my special guest, attorney Jere Beasley from the Beasley Allen Law Firm in Montgomery, Alabama. And we always love having Jere on the show because he handles tremendously important cases, and we love talking to him about that for your benefit. Well, Jere, let's talk about the $72 million verdict in this particular case. I'm sure Johnson & Johnson is appealing. Tell us about the appeal. Where do you think that's going to head?
Well, they will file post-verdict motions with the judge, who, by the way, did an outstanding job, extremely fair, and really kept the case moving. And we tried a case that could have lasted, say, if it were in California, we'd still be trying the case, or several other states. But here, we tried the case in St. Louis, Missouri, and he really did an outstanding job and kept it moving. There'll be motions filed and then ultimately an appeal. We don't see any error in the record. In fact, the judge in my opinion, kept the record clean, and I don't see any possibility of a reversal. They will attack the amount, I'm sure, and we will simply get ready for the next trial. And the next one is in St. Louis in April. And then, for example, just to show you the magnitude of this, before the trial started, we had been contacted by over 6,000 individuals who either had ovarian cancer or had a family member who had died because of the talc. And we have not filed all those. And since the verdict, we've been constantly contacted by people all over this country. We've been contacted from South America, London, foreign countries, other foreign countries, and people are, in fact, yesterday at church, I had people coming up, women, and mentioning this case and saying that they had used these products and they had thrown them away. So the message is getting out, and that's the important thing.
Jere, so I know you're hearing from a lot of different women out there. Are you contemplating a class action in this case, or are you going to try to do individual lawsuits as you move forward?
Well, we have not, for this reason. Each case really stands on its own individual footing. You'll have different periods of time of use. You'll have some frequent use, some constant use. So each case will be a little bit different, and it really doesn't fit the class action model. It's a good word. But I suspect that eventually we will see that happen, and eventually we may even see an MDL cases that are in federal court may be consolidated. But right now we're going to continue to take each case on an individual basis, and ultimately Johnson & Johnson is going to have to start thinking about settling this litigation, because they've taken hits in a lot of other areas, not just this litigation. They have the mesh litigation, which is ongoing, Risperdal. They've got some medical device litigation. And this company needs to, if I was a stockholder of Johnson & Johnson, even though their net worth is off the charts, I'd begin to wonder about their corporate philosophy, because the average person, once they find out about bad corporate conduct, they don't like it, because they're the consumers who are being taken advantage of. And we saw in this case documents, internal documents, that said we can influence everybody. Interesting.
You know what, Jere? It's amazing, really, when our listeners hear about cases like this. The one you talk about last time, you think that's going to cause, or even this case, you'd think that would cause corporate mindsets to change, because they see that train coming down the track, and yet time and again, each corporation will somehow run into their own problems with, as you said, documents that are very damaging, and experts that have told them and warned them about these issues, yet they don't seem to want to bring that to the public's attention, maybe because of the profit motive and all the other things that we know about. So at the end of the day, in this particular case, we're talking about a matter of justice for Ms. Fox and for her family. So with that in mind, what have you learned from this case in helping Ms. Fox that's going to take you forward to help all the other folks that are calling you on this issue?
Well, interestingly enough, before Ms. Fox died, we actually filed the lawsuit while she was still living, and the defendants did a discovery deposition. Here's a woman with cancer, as it turned out, dying with cancer. They put her under 7 hours of intense deposition questioning. The last thing they asked her was, I'm going to paraphrase it, but her answer was graphic and just strong. They asked her this question. They said, Ms. Fox, you're just in this case for the money, aren't you? And she cried in her answer while she was crying. She said, I'm not in it for the money. Said, I don't want any other woman to go through what I've gone through. I want this company to start doing right. And that was her last statement. And the jury was able to see this and hear this. And then they actually even asked her son, who was the last witness we put on the stand, asked him the same question. They said, number one, said, you're not from St. Louis, are you? He said, no, sir. Said, you don't even have any relatives up here. No, sir. Said, all you want is money. That was their last question to him. And he basically answered it this way. He didn't cry, but he teared up and he said, my mom asked me to carry on this lawsuit, and she wants them to do the right thing, to start worrying about a known risk. I'm paraphrasing it, but that was the last statement he made to that jury. I could thank that lawyer for asking that dumb question. I shouldn't say that, but it wasn't sort of a dumb question.
Well, you know what, Jerry, it's cases like this, it's advocacy like you're providing for these poor plaintiffs who are either so injured or dying, that really makes what you do in the legal profession, trying to get what's right in America back on track. Hopefully, Johnson & Johnson will take the litigation that you're talking about and the coming litigation to heart, so that talc may be something that's put in the past, and that they can go forward with the cornstarch and really protect the public. Hopefully, that'll come from the good work that you're doing.
Well, we're going to keep it moving, and if they do, I really appreciate the opportunity to tell the story. And by the way, all of these documents that I'm talking about, you can go to our website and access those documents, and so can the public. But I would hope that Johnson & Johnson would see fit to put this information on their own website. But don't bet on it.
That's right. Well, that's interesting. That's an interesting comment. And with that, Jerry, I exactly where I was going. I was going to ask you, if someone wanted to get in touch with you or learn more about this case from your perspective and these documents, how do they get to your website? Tell us about that.
It's just BeasleyIsland.com. They can access it there, and then they can go. It has all of our phone number and contact information there.
Great.
But I've been getting emails. I assume people are doing that now, because I've gotten emails from all over the world. People who have had a person die in their family, or someone who now has ovarian cancer. And we even got a call from a person connected with Johnson & Johnson, one of their, I say, consultants, who had a family member with ovarian cancer. And that lady asked us if we could represent them, and I'm sort of put in a quandary there. I don't know whether they're trying to set me up or whether that's a legitimate call.
Well, I don't think they're going to put much past you, Jerry. I think you've got their number pretty well. Well, listen, with that, Jerry, I want to thank you very much. This is a very informative show, and I think the public out there that hears this is going to be looking in their medicine chest and making sure that they take that Johnson & Johnson talc baby powder, throw it away, and go buy the cornstarch if they're going to do that. So I think you've provided a tremendous service to the public. I want to thank you again for that, and it's always great to talk to you.
Thank you, Larry, and y'all do a great service too, and it's important to get this information out, and I commend you for it.
Super, super. Now, listen, I'll tell our audience also, if you want to reach any of the Ringler Associates around the country, structured settlements, and you know what we do, you can always go to our website, ringlerassociates.com. You can find any of the Ringler Associates. They're all over the place. And also, of course, you can listen to any Ringler Radio show. They're all on ringlerassociates.com, also on ringlerradio.com, LegalTalkNetwork.com, or you can go to iTunes and download any of these shows and these podcasts. You'll be able to hear this one with Jere Beasley very shortly. So with that, I want to thank you again, Jerry, for being a great guest and for bringing this to the attention of the public.
I appreciate it, Larry. Good to talk to you. Have a good day.
Drew, you absolutely. You too, Jerry. And for all of you out there, go have a great day.
The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own. None of the content should be considered legal advice. As always, consult a lawyer. Thanks for listening to Ringler Radio. With over 1 million listeners, Ringler Associates, the first name in structured settlements. Visit ringlerassociates.com today.